Alright, today in this video we're going to be breaking down a 14 Priory. My group was able to get this done late last night, I believe, after raid. So I wasn't streaming this key, but I do stream, so you can go check me out on my socials linked below. But anyways, let's dive into it. So we're going to be going over everything we did right, wrong, and everything in between. We are running the Brewmaster Monk, Frost Death Knight, Fury Warrior, Outlaw Rogue, along with the Restoration Shaman. Now I believe most of us are running, I think 3 of us are running 4 sets, new 4 sets, and then a few of us are running 2 set as well. So what we're doing is we're shrouding at the start, we're distracting the right hand side, and then we are making our way to this first staircase. Now we are going to be doing a left side route. I feel like a lot of groups have been going right side, our group included. We have been experimenting a lot with going right, but we find that for timing this key, we were kind of going back to our roots, what we were doing in season 2, and just felt like this was a little bit easier. Now, when you're playing with a Fury Warrior and an Outlaw Rogue, most of your damage is going to be fairly capped. So we're trying to play around that, but we're also trying to cater to the Frost Death Knight's Breath of Cindergrosa CD on the 2-minute cooldown. But for the most part, we're just going to kind of be holding W, doing relatively sizable pulls between 6 to 10 targets, and calling it a day. The first pull, actually, I really just leaned into Weapons of Order and my Black Ox cooldown. To try to carry me through to see what the damage looks like. In previous seasons, this pull also required Dampen Harm, Fortifying Brew, Black Ox Brew resets, but I was feeling extremely tanky. One thing also that you'll probably notice is that I'm running Celestial Brew instead of Celestial Infusion. This is more of a comfort pick. The difference between the two is fairly minimal. One offers more of a consistent DR, but requires a little bit more triage / throughput healing, where Celestial Brew is just like a full damage stop until the absorb is eaten. And with the amount of mastery that I have been playing, I felt like Celestial Brew was just going to be stronger for the burst damage in this dungeon from things like the Shield Slam, from things like the Sacred Toll casts, from like specific tank busters. So I felt like this was a better play for me, but you can run either or. Speaking of talents, I will have them located down below so you guys can see what talent build I was running. Now, this is kind of awkward because normally what we do is we wait for Chainmail, but we killed Suleiman kind of late in this pull. Normally we focus him down a little bit more. So what we decided to do instead is just pull this patrol route. Now, this was kind of made up on the fly. We find that knights, and this is something that we've learned from going on the right-hand side, is that the knights aren't terrible when you're playing with a rogue because the impale cast is now actually being shown for us who it's targeting, so we can make active decisions on, does that player have a defensive? Is it going on a rogue who can like meld and or vanish and or even evasion it and just dodge the bleed entirely? So we felt like the change to knights actually make knights a little bit more doable now. So the knight's going to be the last thing alive since it does have a little bit bigger health pool, and then what we're going to do is we're going to grab Chainmail from kind of her spawn location. Now she runs to the mini-boss that died, the corpse of the mini-boss. So based on where you kill the mini-bosses at, that's where those mini-bosses are going to run to. Now we could have skipped Chainmail entirely. We didn't have to pull her, but we think she's very efficient counts in terms of efficiency score for points, and it's kind of easy to deal with. And we're going to show you how to deal with it right now. So what we're doing is we're actually taking the 2 mini-bosses together, Chainmail and Aeyma. This, I believe, was a strategy that we found from the Monksy group last season. Now, she won't leap on top of, if there's no path available. So what our group is doing is you can see them standing up on top of this table here. Every time she's going to cast the lunging strike, it's going to find no path available, and therefore just basically make her a target dummy, where we can just hit this pack basically indefinitely until she dies. And we're focusing Chainmail so we can move on with the rest of the pull. The only time you have to move off the table is when she casts this Brutal Smash ability, and then as soon as that ends, all of our players are going to jump back on top. Now, one thing to note as a tank, if you're doing this strategy for any reason and people are using this table, which is pretty much going to be only pre-made groups, I doubt Pugs will ever do this, make sure you're tanking them very close to the table. I've made the mistake in the past, and I've seen other tanks make the mistake of like pulling the mobs a little bit too far away where DPS can't actually like do anything, or they have to jump off the table to do damage. So just be aware that you have to basically be right next to the table for melee to do their damage. Anyways, I committed most of my defensives that pull, including Weapons of Order at the start, as well as Dampen Harm. I do still have Fortifying Brew. I've been kind of sitting on it for a bit. I could definitely be more active about using it, but without playing Special Delivery, I'm only ever really going to need to, or feel like I need to use it like in certain polls. And that was definitely not a poll where I felt like I was in danger. The 20%/30% DR wouldn't keep me alive because I already stayed alive, so we're kind of just chilling. We're trying to finish off chainmail before we chain, and once we chain, or once chainmail goes down, we will be able to move into the next couple of pulls. The idea is now that we're going to just walk with Aeyma, make sure we're kicking her, and we're going to take it like one pack at a time by pulling on top of her. Now, these pulls can get pretty scary. Luckily, we have a fairly tanky group. I believe we're going to have one death here, actually, on our warrior at some point in the next couple of minutes, due to an overlap of a couple of bolts. As you can see right there, a bunch were targeting our Death Knight. Luckily, we were able to stop some of the kicks. But basically, we have like just people watching fireballs and holy smites. It's really important for this kind of pull structure to be, everyone has to be extremely attentive to what kicks are going off and on who they're going on. If you have 3 bolts plus a purification beam going on one player, it's GG's. Now, at this point, we're going to try to make sure we're killing this light spawn first, getting him below 25%. Then we're going to kick Aeyma, and then we're going to move Aeyma. And then now that the light spawn finishes the beam, he's going to start channeling his burst of light. Now, unfortunately, no one was really paying attention here. And the greater heal went off on Aeyma, healing her for 40% of her health, or 30%, whatever the number ends up being. And that really set us back. So now Aeyma is back up to 50%, up from the 15 that she was at. And then she's going to gain a reflective shield. So normally what's happening now is Aeyma goes down, and then Duelmal runs in, and then we just start running with Duelmal and pull him like pack by pack. But unfortunately, now we're set back a little bit. So this is a massive blunder for us. I could have Ring of Peace. Our warrior had a kick available, wasn't paying attention. But we also had, Ring, we had Cap, we had Thunderstorm, we had Shockwave, we had Ring of Peace. We also could have just gripped the mob too to stop its or delay its cast till kicks were up. These were all things that we could have done better. So make sure you're paying attention to the greater heal, or it can end kind of terribly. So now at this point, we're waiting to kick Aeyma. We're going to kick her because light spawn's about to blow up, and now we're going to pull her out of the burst of light. Once again, the greater heal is about to go off. I para it because no one's kicking, and now my kick becomes available, but luckily Carrot beat me to it, but that's okay. As long as that heal doesn't go off, because it's always going to try to target any mob that's like below 50% health, or the lowest targeted, or the lowest health pool mob. And in that case, it's Aeyma, and it's a percentage-based heal, so if it goes off, it's kind of GG's. Now, most of these pulls for us are going to be very tame, for specifically the Brewmaster. Like, I'm never going to have to use a defensive. Essentially, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to pocket my defensives for the boss fight. So I know that we're going to be on the boss within the next 2 minutes, so I could send Dampen if I really want to. I could arguably send 4 because I believe I'm running Fortification, which is the 2-minute reduction on the 6-minute CD, but we're gonna hold. Same kind of pull here. There's 4 casters, so our idea is make sure that these fireballs or holy smites are not targeting the same player. If you look at my party frames, you can see there's little icons hovering over. So there's 2 on Carrot right now. Unfortunately, they're both going to connect, and he's going to die because of it. That is something that we should have been aware of. Like, oh, there's 2 casts on him. We could have kicked. I believe my kick was available, as well as our healers, and we have sleep, we have sweep, we have shockwave, we have ring. Like, we had a lot of tools in the kit to stop that cast. But so that's kind of the most important thing about this route specifically, is that your DPS has to be really locked in. This works very well for melee cleaves, to lock down these mobs. Now, normally Duelmal would be roughly dead right here, and we would just go into boss with trash. But unfortunately, Duelmal's still at 50% health because we had that little bit of a fiasco earlier. So we're going to pull mobs onto Duelmal. Now, unfortunately, we should have gripped these in sooner. That is very important for Death Knight to do, is to grip mobs in, especially sharpshooter mobs, like immediately. So what ends up happening is he grips them in, and then they just end up disengaging anyways. So if it was sooner, we could have kept them locked down, but nonetheless. This pull can be also fairly brutal for healers, or I should just say people in general, if they're getting leaped on by several lynxes, as well as any pot shots that connect, as well as Duelmal's fireball ability. So make sure you're still kicking. Lock down any pot shots if you see them targeting the same player, especially if they have a bleed on them, and then we're going to go into boss. So this guy's at like 20%, so I'm just heading over to the boss. It was kind of late for us. This is 1:30 in the morning, so we're probably pretty sleepy. We didn't really realize that I was going, so our DPS are kind of trailing in. And now we are on the first boss. So first boss, with Emberlanz, this is a tank and healer heavy fight. If you swap to going to the right side, The tank and the healer are going to be chilling, and it's really going to be a DPS fight, and it's going to be making sure you lock down kicks with some of these overlaps. Now, the problem with this is that going left side now is that this earth-shattering spear does a burst of AoE damage, and often it'll come out near the end of this Holy Radiance cast. Blizzard, I think, did a job where they won't ever go off at the same time. Same with like the Ember Storm, or they'll go off towards the end of the cast. But basically, there's going to be like a little bit heavier burst of damage, so it's really on the healer to make sure everyone's topped. And for the tank, there's obviously 2 tank busters versus 1 tank buster. So this fight is really, it's kind of controlled by those 2 roles compared to the DPS. The DPS just kind of get to blink out on this fight. Now, I'm going to be rotating through my defensives whenever I do get one of these bleeds, unless I feel fairly safe. Fortifying Brew, Dampen Harm. Our Weapons of Order window is now a little bit stronger when playing Call to Arms, as well as we have access to Nizao as well, who's going to stagger damage for us. So all of these things are working in our favor. So Monk is a little bit easier to do on this fight, but I also found that last season, this fight wasn't too terrible. As a full melee cleave, we're mostly just kind of trying to play near these old patches on the ground, and then as soon as the patch comes out or one of the earth-shattering spears, we're just moving the boss next to the old pool. There's not as much movement on this fight because there's no Ember Storm we have to dodge, so DPS get to just kind of plant and Zug. And then, yeah, the rest of the fight is kind of just rinse and repeat. It's the same kind of... It's different patterns of the same mechanics, where it's like the mauling on a player, the tank buster, obviously, with the Divine Judgment, the AoE from Emberlanz. These things are fairly predictable, though, and we have things fairly mapped out. I believe that this next AoE is going to be a little dry because we don't have Link available. We do have AMZ, but that's pretty much it. Now, one thing I'm also running in this dungeon is I'm running an old version of the Ringing Ritual Mud. I felt like I would rather focus more on survivability in this run than anything else. So I'm running that, and I'm actually, luckily enough, I was able to snag a Brand of Ceaseless Ire from the raid last night on Heroic. So I've been running that as well. So I'm running like relatively 2 damage trinkets, but also Brand does insane damage. So I'm not going to say it's a really defensive trinket at this point, but it's very good. Now, at this point in the fight, I do want to start banking some of my CDs for a next pull. It's going to be pretty big. I think naively, our Death Knight sent Breath towards the end of this, encounter. I think he should have saved for the next pull, but it's at the same time, it's kind of fine because we also want the boss to die quickly. But I think, I personally, I think I would have saved. You could see that our warrior saved here, and obviously rogues don't really have CDs when you're playing Outlaw. So we're going to go into a fairly large pull here. Now, luckily, I do have weapons. I do have all my defensives. Yeah, so I'm going to be pretty healthy here. I have Ring Ritual Mud just came up. We're going to get a quick... we procced Shadow off of our natty Flurry Strikes. Now I'm popping Weapons of Order for a second version of Shadow, and then I'm going to be able to proc, because I'm running the 4-set, I'm able to proc at 120 energy, which is insane, that they actually never changed it to 150, and then we're going to just keep blasting. So as you can see, our damage is climbing. My Call of the Arms faded after 12 seconds, so now I'm going to pop my regular Black Ox, and my damage is going to just sustain around the 15 million damage per second mark, because Nizao does an insane amount of damage. And then to optimize the damage even further, I'm using Black Ox Brew to reset Purify, so I can Purify to get more stomp damage. So all of these things kind of working together, from our tier set to the Shadow proc to optimizing our uptime on our Black Ox, allowed me to have uptime of like 35 seconds with the 32% damage amp, and being able to proc Flurry Strikes often, very often. So pretty good first pull now. Unfortunately, it's dwindling. Breath did come up towards the end now, so the Death Knight is able to climb, but I think Breath would have been way more impactful at the start of that pull instead of, halfway through. But that's okay. We end up timing this key, so we're Gucci. Once the Paladins are pretty much dead, we're going to chain. Now, the way that we kind of pull structure this is that we never want to really have more than like 2 casters. The next pull, actually both next pulls have 2 casters in them. So we're kind of just using this as a cooldown recovery pull. We're just focusing these 4 mobs. We don't really have CDs anyway, so that doesn't matter. We have Breath and 40 avatars coming up. But ideally, we want this priest to die before we chain. And then once we chain, CDs can be sent. So that's kind of what we're looking to do here. And now, because some of these mobs are below 50%, when we do roll in, they're going to try to cast Greater Heal. So I'm going to try to, I para it, and then I roll back up to get a kick, and then I start moving back down here. Now, what's nice is we're going to use this pillar to line of sight some of these casters down if we need to. Now, luckily, we have a Death Knight to grip. Unfortunately, it's really difficult to move these mobs regardless of having grips or not, without a ton of like coordinated kicks and crowd control. Most of what I'm doing here defensively is just sending everything on cooldown as it comes up, since I cycled it up, or cycled them earlier when we were doing that large pull right after first boss. If you cycle your CDs, they're naturally going to come up cycled, and then you can just keep kind of using the CDs in the same order. So I now have the Black Ox available. I'll eventually have Fortifying Brew available. Then I'll have Black Ox Brew, and then Dampen Harm will come back up along with Weapons of Order. So as we kind of stagger them, and I don't mean that as a pun, but it can be, that we are just kind of working through our CDs as they come up. And again, these are kind of the same mobs over and over again. So it's just a couple of paladins, a couple of mages, or conjurers, I guess, and the priest. So one thing our shaman is doing is he's kicking the priest always. It's giving him holy DR to allow him to live these tolls. You can see every time a toll goes out, his health like barely moves. And then the rest of us are kind of watching the conjure. We find that fireballs are a little bit more scary than the smites, and the smites aren't casted as consistently. You could also let these flame strikes go off, but we tend to stop them just to minimize movement or to maximize like floor space, even though we have a ton of room to work with. You can see me putting down world markers. These are mostly just for reference. We play like this kind of 4-corner strategy where we'll start on blue, and then we'll always move clockwise, and then I can comment out pretty easy. We're going to bait on X, move to triangle, or, you know, we're going to bait on blue, move to green, or move to triangle, whatever it might be. There's a little bit of boss RP here. Now, luckily for us, we have Brand of Ceaseless Ire, which is slowly fading. But what's cool about this trinket is it's like a tank version of Eye of Kazan. Now, if you didn't play last season, Eye of Kazan was this insanely powerful trinket that started off just by giving you a flat mastery stat stick, but every time you were in combat and you would like be dealing damage or casting spells, it would give you a stacking main stat buff that would go all the way up to 20. And like the value of the trinket was so high if you got to 20 stacks and were able to maintain it for an entire dungeon. And that's somewhat similar to what Brand does. Now, it doesn't give main stat, but it gives like a ton of single target damage and absorb. So as we pull and as we try to stay in combat the entire dungeon, our trinket's just going to ramp up like crazy. So the general idea for this fight is that we're going to bait the first set of swirls kind of on the blue corner, and then we always move 90 degrees around the room, unless a pyre spawns in a weird spot where we have to move like kitty corner or catty corner, whatever the term is, directly like across or like diagonally. So what we're doing is we're baiting green, then we're moving to star here, and we're having Rogue soak the first 3 on this 5 set, and then AMS on the second. I didn't talk about the first one. The first one was just AMS. A DK with AMS can generally soak the first 2 and or 3. I believe it's 3 until like a specific key level where maybe I'll break the shield beforehand, but you can like AMS immune the dot, which is super broken. This is so going to be another Frost DK season. I'm so mad. We're going to bait Castigator shields here. One interesting thing too is the shield, the Castigator shield can be reflected by warriors for damage. So you're going to see Carrot like doing some insane damage overall here on this fight because of that spell reflect. So on this set, I'm soaking the first, or all 3 of them. So the order of it, I believe, is 3, 5, 3, 5, 5. I think it's 2 5s in a row near the end of the fight. It might be like a little, it might actually be a 3. Normally we kill beforehand, but next pyre, we have a AMS available once again. So what we're going to do is whenever AMS is available, he's going to soak 2 to 3 every single time. So in this case, he's going to soak 3, and then I'll soak the last 2. I'm also trying to hold the boss close so our Death Knight can continue doing damage during the soak. So if someone else is soaking that isn't the tank, holding the boss nice and close to it, yeah, it just allows you to have like a little bit of uptime. It's uptime optimization. And so now our goal is to beat the next pyre. Generally sub 15% health, sub 10% health, depending on your cooldowns, is generally safe. It really depends on the DPS you're playing with and how competent they are, if I'm being honest. But in this case, we're just going to run away from the pyre. It's not going to matter. I'll Tiger us off the slow, and then we're going to tunnel. We have basically until the next pyre spawns in 18 seconds to kill this boss. I think that it's like a second or 2 less than that, but basically we have plenty of time to tunnel here. And so he's going to go down. I didn't even have to use Touch of Death, which is nice. I should have, because that'll give me a damage gain for this next pull. But we're going to head in here and start walking this pack up the stairs. So this is a 2 Paladin, 2 Priest, 2 Templar pull. Templars are the scary tank mobs. The Paladins add a little bit of consistent group damage with their Sacred Toll cast that will affect the tank. So Diffuse Magic is really good for this pull whenever those tools are coming out or you're low on health or when the Templars are buffed. Now, if we're purging, that's also a fine thing. I don't believe we purge. The general consensus with our healer is that he will purge if it will keep us alive, or in cases like be an insane amount. Like, let's say a mob has like an insane absorb on them that he can purge off, like he'll purge. But if I'm not going to die to the Templars, it's more efficient for us to do damage or heal than it is to purge off that buff if the tank isn't going to die. I don't even think I do track the buff, but like I'm not really paying attention to it because Stagger is kind of broken. And we're feeling very, very, very healthy here. Now I'm holding on to weapons for the next pull, which will send and try. And I got a Shadow proc, so my damage at the start of the next pull should be fairly big. I just want to finish off this Paladin because the first pack going into this last final area of the Cathedral is a double Paladin Templar pull, which can obviously be pretty scary. So we're going to finish that off, and now we're rolling in and we're pulling the pack on the right-hand side. So we're going to kick the mage, and now we're going to start backing up. I don't like to play in this room. There's too many things that can go wrong, especially playing with like a thing like a Death Knight. I learned this last season playing with like Ret Paladins is Divine Storm. If they're not paying attention, they'll just send it into another pack. Generally, these players are pretty conscious of that, but you just never know. Also, someone might make a split-second decision to dodge left or right, and they might go left and not realize there's a patrol that's coming around. So pulling out of the room slowly and then looping your way back in is generally the way that I like to do this. Now, somehow, we got the light spawn extremely low, very fast, and we were able to get all the mobs out of the light spawn's burst of light. The best time to push him below 25% health is during the purification channel, because then the tank can actually pull the mobs away, and we know that the mob will just start to blow up after the fact. So doing Fury Warrior damage on this pull is pretty good. This 4 set is phenomenally broken. I think Master of Harmony is going to end up being better later on, but I'm a big fan of this set. I like how bursty it feels. It's very fun optimizing like Weapons of Order windows, especially if you get a Shadow proc like right beforehand. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually going to para out one of the mages. I'm going to ring a piece it away, and now we can grip it in. And by gripping it in and having it far enough away from its patrol, it won't actually pull the patrol. It's going to keep walking around like nothing ever happened, which is so funny to think about if you were like that NPC. Like your buddy next to you just gets randomly paralysis and then just gets gripped away, and you're like, okay, whatever. Gonna keep doing our rounds in this cathedral. Anyways, what I'm trying to do here is most of these packs are going to be pretty tame because we're not doing any more like double paladins or anything like that. I'm trying to bank a lot of my cooldowns for Braunpyke. We're going to do a big pull with Lust on Braunpyke. Lust just came up right now, but we do have the patrol to still deal with. We could have pulled this area a little bit more aggressively. I have no doubt in my mind. We're going to grip the mage here in a second, and then we have Breath of Cindergrosa. I don't know if he sends here. It looks like he does send. I think he should have saved for Lust, but again, that's fine. I'm not here to micromanage cooldowns. But holding for the next fight or the next pull is going to be really, really good. This pull is really not that scary. But Kara did send Rex, so Rex roughly like a 45-second CD, give or take. So he should have it up for the next pull, which will be good. So Light Spawn is trying to get pushed to 25% here. Start casting Burst of Light. We're going to pull these guys out, the Footmen. And then I definitely want this pull to go down before I end up chaining. I'm fishing for a Shadow proc. Unfortunately, I got a crit proc going to this next pull, but hopefully we can get a nice Shadow proc off of our Weapons of Order. So I'm going to pair out one of the priests so we have one less kick to deal with, and then we're going to pull in Braunpyke, the 2 priests, and the 3 Footmen. Now, this is mostly a route that was catered to back in last season to like double Outlaw Fury, but it works fine here as well. So we pop Weapons of Order, we get a Shadow proc very early on, which is super, super nice. And then our Weapons of Order, or not our Weapons of Order, our Call to Arms faded. So now we summon our actual Black Ox. He's going to start kind of pumping. I will be able to use Black Ox Brew here in a second to get some more stomp damage. Fortunately enough, the priest did go down. Once we start getting these footmen a little bit lower, we're going to start pulling over to the other priest. And then as soon as the footmen die, we're going to grip the priest in, or near death, I should say. And then we're going to make sure we're getting kicks. Now, it's priority for a shaman to kick at all times in this area, especially on the smite cast, because they get a holy DR, which helps them stay alive through this rot damage, through any casts that are going off, etc. So with Braunpyke being low, Breath now just came up. Again, in terms of cooldown optimization, it would have been much better to have that breath cooldown on 8 targets or 7 targets or whatever it is versus 2 targets. So finally, this route was kind of jank, so we're definitely going to optimize a little bit more because we randomly pulled that night patrol earlier on. But we're going to pull this pack into boss, and then we know that going in, yeah, we have 7.5 minutes, but we have one more pack to do afterwards. I was debating pulling that other pack onto boss and or just doing this pack with that other, like, it's like a Paladin, Priest, Templar, maybe, or Footman. That was down that we're going to end up killing at the end of the dungeon. This route is like a little bit overcount as well. A little bit, so it's like 101%. So I don't run this route. This route is bad. That's and I got disoriented because I'm bad. Don't run this route. This route is bad. I'm gonna do another video eventually with a better route that is more optimized, especially for a thing like a Frost Death Knight that has bigger, like a big cooldown with breath. So yeah. But this, I'm hoping this video shows you that you can kind of just like hold W and win. It's good. And that you can make mistakes. When you have 4 set. Only when you have 4 sets. Because if you don't have a group with 4 sets, you're not able to recover from those kind of mistakes. Like letting a greater heal go off. Having a bolt death. Stuff like that. Having an unoptimized route. So this fight is pretty chill. Like there's not much going on. There is a strategy where you can like not kick. I accidentally kicked really early and then I just like botched the whole thing. But if you don't kick, what happens is that she has like this weird sequencing of spells where when you kick her, it locks her out of certain abilities versus others, and you can delay her inner fire to be after the blinding light. And the inner fire buffs her, like all of her holy damage by 50%, and it makes her radiate group damage. Obviously, this is problematic because the blinding light does holy damage, so it's a big burst here. So we're going to look away, but you can see like we get fairly low. Now there's a couple of counterplays here. You can line of sight this technically by using like edges of the room. I know it's a circle, but like if you tank the boss near the wall, you can like line of sight on the stairs. And same thing here, you can use the stairs to line of sight her cast later. But using that as kind of like an optimization thing. We're going to blow up this shield. We had Avatar Wreck. I had Weapons of Order rolling with a bunch of Shadow proc damage. So we're going to be able to skip the second set of ads. Last season in higher keys, if you didn't have cooldowns, you would definitely get a second set. Very rarely would you ever get a third set. You'd have to be like down a DPS player to get a third set of ads. Oddly enough, I feel like the ads live a little longer. We keep talking about this both on stream and when we're doing like keys like this off stream, is like the ads are coming up way further than we feel like they used to. So maybe we're overthinking it, but it seems like they're losing less health per second. I don't know. But yeah, just using things like Ring of Peace, Lake of Sweep, to keep them away is plenty fine. The end of this fight is really anticlimactic. It's just like you have actually more space to work with, in my opinion, than in the previous room. It's also easier to see the mechanics on the floor compared to like this nice like white stone versus like the ornate gold floor that's down in the first encounter space area. So yeah, the idea is just run the beam away, or like immune it, obviously, and send a melee if you're a rogue, and just kill boss. We do something funny here. Every time we're in here, we try to spell CL's name with the beam. So you can see we drew the C, and we're going to try to draw the L after this, but I think we end up like dying because of it. But we always try to write out CL's name because it's just funny. So yeah. Oh, CL got it, so he's... Yeah, okay, he messed up. But that's all right. So boss goes down. We still have 2% to go, or technically 1.88, which is, I believe, like a little bit of this pull. I don't think we need to kill one of like the priest or the footman or something like that in this pull, or the Templar or the footman. But we're just gonna pull this anyways. It's 2.5%, so it's like 7.7 over. Not a big deal. And we just blast like this. There's nothing to talk about here. That's pretty much the end of the key. Luckily, Weapons of Order, like you can, the tier set, I guess I can rant about that for a second. So I have the 4-set bonus. They ended up they nerfed the 2-set bonus significantly, but they ended up like reverting the 4-set. Because the 4-set like never worked on PTR in terms of like the 150 that they changed it to. So it's back down to 120 energy, which is fine. It's a little bit better cadence, but they nerfed the amount of Flurry Strike damage on the 2-set bonus. So it's a lot weaker with that. But it's obviously the 4 set is still extremely, extremely strong. I think for pure single target, and I think later in the season, the Master of Harmony tier set bonus is going to end up being way, way, way better when we're all like 720. Similar to something that we saw last season where we ended up having, whatchamacallit, Master of Harmony was like, it was hyped up on PTR, it fell off pretty hard. Or not fell off, but like it didn't have a strong start to the season and then ended up being really good by the end. It's going to be very similar kind of cadence to that, where I think Shado-pan is going to be, and it's not only going to be very good right now, but it looks very good because of how bursty it can be in some pulls. In terms of AoE, it's great. In terms of single target, it's okay, but man, does Harmonic Surge just like absolutely slap. But yeah, that's the run. Hope you guys learned something. I did 4.12 overall. I don't know if I end up showing it off, but I believe my Brand of Ceaseless Ire did like 14% of my damage. It blows my mind that they buffed this trinket versus nerfing it. But yeah, we just looted our best in slot neck. Well, I shouldn't say it. Kara did, and he graciously traded it to me, so I'm very excited. Going up a little bit more item level here. But yeah, that's the run. I will try to have the build and the route and everything down below. Oh, here's the damage breakdown. Flurry Strikes obviously being a hefty portion, followed by Brand of Ceaseless Ire being 14%. Insane amounts. Very fun hero talent. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will catch you all in the next one. Peace.